very fortunate to have her back again today to speak to us from her truthful heart and her brilliant mind. She is an inspirational speaker, a published writer, and a supportive coach to others, always encouraging others to trust their own knowing. She's authored 2 highly recommended books about life. One is called Journey to Personal Freedom, which I have and have read, and The Giggle Factor, a grown-up fairy tale. That sounds exciting. Esther herself is a true testament to a woman who walks her talk. She blesses us with her insightful awareness as she shares her true life stories, always revealing a deep and meaningful truth about life. Please join me in welcoming Esther now as she shares her experiences on the thoughts of embracing chaos, finishing old cycles.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for bearing with us as Brent and I try to get this recorded. And if it works, it'll get up on YouTube. I'll send the link to the e-news in case you're interested in any bits and pieces of it that you might have missed today. Just have to get this thing clicked onto. I actually have notes this time. The first one is to remind me to start my recording. Thank you, Laura. I'm actually going to keep my eye on the clock, even though it's hard to see with that light on. And hopefully at the end there might be a chance for 1 or 2 questions. So if you have a burning question while I'm speaking today, you might get a chance to ask it at the end. Sometimes my best. Is everybody hearing me? Who can't hear me? Okay, great. I just got to keep this away from my face. Since Laura asked me to speak on this, I've been on an interesting journey. And I'll share some of it with you today because there isn't time for all of it. But I've been waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and with thoughts running through my head about what might want to be said today. And I was at a movie and was, oh yeah, that's great. And reading a novel and it's, oh yes, this fits. And so I'm not sure which of that is going to show up today, but we'll just watch and see what happens. So, chaos. Something that has often evoked a negative response. And in some ways reminds me of the negative response that I used to have to death. And so I started wondering, what if, I've gotten over the fear of death and see it now as just another part of the whole experience of life and death. It's with us all the time. And I was really blessed to lose any fear of death, but what if I could lose the fear of chaos? What if, as Laura said, I can embrace the chaos in my life? So I started to look at where chaos shows up in my life. And of course there are the obvious places. The chaos of how to accept the fact that there's so much beauty, so many beautiful people, so many kind, wonderful people. So many people who want nothing more than to have great friendships, good family, a wonderful life. And then you turn in another direction and there's the horror and the terrible things that go on in the world. And we think, how can this be? How can I live in this kind of chaos? How can I accept that kind of chaos? And it's a real challenge. And so then I looked at another area of chaos in my life. And some of my deepest chaos came from a time when I was letting go of one story and trying to embrace another. I'll explain that in a bit. How many of you remember the first story you ever believed about who you are, how you were created, what religion is, what spirituality is? Do you remember that story? So, how many of you still believe the same story as the first one that you were told? Okay, I gather not too many. So, letting go of one story and embracing another can create chaos. And just a really simple example of that is when I went from being married to being single. I was living in the story of being a married person. And when I became single, my thoughts still regularly went to, oh, I'm married. Oh, I'm married. And oh, we'll do this. And it was like, oh, no, it's I'll do this. And I refer to that as mental whiplash. It's like, you think you're going one way, and it's like, nope. And it takes a while to get into that new frame of reference. But when it comes to our inner sense of who we are, beliefs are so deeply ingrained that they're very difficult to change, no matter how much we might want to. How many times have you heard just believe this and life will be great? And you want to scream and say, how do I just believe that? I don't know how to let go of a belief. It's like somebody asking me to believe that I can walk on water. Oh, I'd love to believe that, but how do I get to believe that? So over my life, I've had times when the story that I believed and believed strongly, and that head, heart, whole body embodiment of a belief is so strong that even when the head starts thinking, I don't want to believe this anymore, I want to believe something else, it's really hard to move in that other direction. Whether it's something as simple as, I'm not a horrible person, I'm really a pretty good person. It takes a while to change the programming that wants to nag at you and say, that was a nasty thing to do. Well, it's no wonder, you're just a nasty person. And so I love the phrase, I can't believe everything I think. And so I thought about, okay, so how do I change the story? How do I change my belief? And for me, I've had to look at it like cross-country skiing. And some of you have heard this before, because when you're cross-country skiing, you're going smoothly in a path that's been created for a long time. And if you see someplace else that you want to go across this beautiful, pristine field of beautiful, fresh snow, you literally have to stop, replant the skis, and change direction. And that's been my way of shifting my beliefs. If my mind wants to go in one direction, I think, no, that doesn't serve me anymore. That story isn't supporting my inner me. There's turmoil inside me. There's chaos here that says there has to be something else. I want to believe this other thing. I want to believe that I'm a good person. I want to believe that I'm okay. So whenever those thoughts come up, I have to stop, create another thought, and intentionally think the new thought until it becomes the pattern and the old tracks get blown over and aren't relevant in my life anymore. So what I found is when I thought I needed to let go of the story of my Christianity, because for me, Christianity was fear-inducing. Fear, guilt, shame, blame-inducing. That's what Christianity was for me. So I wanted to let go of that story. So I read and I talked to people, And I found another story that I wanted to work for me. And it felt right. My head said, yes, this is a much better story. This story really supports me. But it was shocking how long it took for me not to be able to watch televangelists on the TV without thinking that I was going to get sucked back into that fear and thinking that, I had to get it right or I was going to hell, that eventually that left. But you know what didn't leave right away? My ridiculing other people who lived in that story. Oh, they still believe that over And it took a while for me to understand, and that at least for me, my new story became everybody's story is true. There isn't a truth with a capital T. And I'm not telling you what to believe, I'm just telling you my story here. I came to the conclusion that there is no truth with a capital T. If it's my story and it resonates for me, it's true. If it continues after I've implemented it, after I've let go of the old story and I've completely embraced the new one, if it resonates with me and it feels like it's really coming from within me, it's true no matter what the story is. And the way I eventually got to embrace that all stories are true was when I was earlier getting to know my daughter that I'd given up for adoption. And she's living a life of a born-again Christian and regularly wanted to convert me back to Christianity. And she said things like, Esther, you're the most Christ-like person I know. How is it you can't accept him as your Savior so you can be saved and go to heaven? And what I remembered from my experiences with Christianity is that for me, it created hypocrisy because I couldn't walk that talk. It didn't work for me. So I targeted everybody that was a Christian as being hypocritical or stupid or, not getting it, not enlightened. Until I realized one day that I was claiming that everybody had the right to their own beliefs. And yet I was suggesting that she was wrong. So in that moment, I wrote her a letter and apologized for being the hypocrite that I hate. And we've had an incredibly wonderful relationship since. She just got remarried on Friday. It was the most beautiful Christian wedding you ever could have been to, full of love and joy and family and community and acceptance, and it was so beautiful. Because I lost my judgment of other stories. I really accepted in my whole being that everybody's story is true. I no longer need to ridicule. Part of my struggle with some of the stories that I've tried to adapt is that there is some sense for me in many of the stories of punishment and reward. If my life isn't looking exactly the way I want it to, if I'm not as happy, healthy, and wealthy as I want to be, I'm being punished for something. I didn't get something right. And if my life is looking really good and I'm happy and things are going well, I'm being rewarded because I'm this amazing being who got it right. And then I realized that I don't really like that story either. Because somehow it had a ring of arrogance to it. That all the people that are suffering in the world did something to deserve that. So it's like in my first book, Journey to Personal Freedom, when I talk about raising children, I ask the question, is it possible that we take blame for what our children do because we want to accept the accolades for what they do right? What if they just are who they are and it's really got nothing to do with us? So I came up with some more what ifs. What if the Creator, whoever that Creator is, and for me, the Creator is Giggle. Giggle is the author of my life, and that's why this book is called Giggle Factor. Giggle wrote the story of my life. I have no authority in my life whatsoever. I've taken absolutely and totally to heart the notion of surrender. I surrender my life completely. So, what if there is no punishment or reward? What if choice is an illusion? What if free will is just another story? I have a story now that works for me. I'm living in this place of awe, gratitude, and bliss that I've never had before in my life. And from a place of complete surrender, I have no idea when another story is going to want to come forth. And I may go through the chaos again. My only hope is that if that happens, I will be ready to embrace the chaos, knowing from my experience that it's through my deepest chaos that I've found the greatest wisdom and joy and blessings in my life. So when I look at the chaos in the world, and I imagine that it's not because we as human beings are worthless or that we've done something wrong to create this world the way it is. What if it's created exactly the way it is because this is the experience we're here to have? And when we're drawn to work towards changing it, we do it. If we're not drawn towards changing it, we let it be okay. We let go of anything that causes us blame, shame, and guilt. We embrace the nature of being the perfect human beings that we were created to be, having the perfect experience that Creator created for us. And for me, one of the beautiful things about accepting this story is that everything is possible. Nothing in our experience has to follow science or laws. We could wake up tomorrow in a completely different world if that's what the Creator chooses. So, I love my life. I love how I get to experience it in this moment. And again, my hope is that if chaos shows up again,